I heard Mateo's voice before anything registered. Mama, there's a man at the door who looks like us. I turned from the espresso machine, a half-smile already forming, expecting to see another regular with kind eyes and loose change. The smile died. Louis Mancuso stood in the doorway of the Morning Ember, perfectly still, his charcoal suit and the serpent tattoo coiling up his neck marking him as exactly what he was: dangerous, powerful, and utterly impossible. My world tilted. The ceramic cup I'd been holding slipped. I caught it midair, but my hands betrayed me, trembling violently. 5 years. 5 years of vanishing, of scrubbing away every trace of Brielle Cortland and becoming someone forgettable in a city that asked no questions. 5 years of believing I was invisible and he just walked through my door. Mama makes really good hot chocolate, Nico was chattering, his platinum blonde head tilted up at the stranger. Do you want some? Louis didn't respond. He couldn't. His hazel eyes, those unmistakable eyes flecked with gold, were locked on Nico's face like he was staring at a mirror that had fractured time itself. Then his gaze shifted, slow and inevitable, to the corner booth where Mateo sat with crayons scattered around him, coloring what looked like a dragon breathing fire. The same platinum hair. The same sharp jawline already forming beneath baby fat. The same eyes. 2 men in black tactical gear flanked Louis now, scanning the cafe with the cold efficiency of trained killers. But even they had frozen when they noticed the boys. Nico, sweetheart, I managed, my voice steady despite the scream building in my chest. Go sit with your brother. But Mama. Now. Something in my tone made him pause, his bottom lip wobbling, but he obeyed. I watched him go, using those precious seconds to remember how to breathe, how to think, how to survive this. When I looked back, Louis had moved. He was at the counter now, close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar and smoke, and it hit me like a fist, dragging up memories of tangled sheets and whispered promises I'd tried to bury. Brielle. My real name sounded like a death sentence in his mouth. The cafe was empty except for Mrs. Chin in the far corner, her newspaper forgotten as she watched us with wide eyes. The lunch rush had ended 30 minutes ago. I'd been counting on quiet to prep for the evening. We're closed, I said, my voice ice over fire. You need to leave. One of his men made a sound, half laugh, half warning. Louis silenced him with a look that could shatter steel. Closed, he repeated, his gaze flicking to the neon open sign still glowing in the window. His attention returned to the twins and something raw flickered across his face. 5 years, Brielle. 5 years you've been gone. His voice dropped to something lethal. And now I find you here with sons who have my face. My heart was a war drum. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't. The word cracked like a gunshot. Don't lie to me. Not about them. Mateo looked up from his coloring, his hazel eyes, Louis's eyes, meeting his father's across the room. I watched my son's expression shift from curiosity to confusion, and my chest tightened. Mateo could sense danger the way animals sense storms. Mama. His voice was small. It's okay, baby. These men are leaving. No, Louis said softly, but there was nothing soft about the steel beneath it. We're not. Mrs. Chin stood abruptly, gathering her things with the speed of someone who recognized violence when it walked through the door. The bell chimed as she fled, and then we were alone. Me, Louis, his soldiers, and my children, the sons he never knew existed. We'll talk, Louis said, his voice dangerous velvet. Tonight. After you close. And if I refuse? His smile was a blade. Then I'll be back tomorrow. And the day after that. His eyes found the twins again, and something almost vulnerable cracked through his armor. I'm not walking away from this, Brielle. I felt the trap closing. 8 o'clock. The cafe closes at 7. Give me time to put them to bed. Surprise flickered in his expression. He'd expected a fight. 8 o'clock, he agreed. He moved toward the door, but halfway there he stopped. Turned. Their names. I could have refused. Should have. Mateo and Nico. He repeated them like a prayer. Mateo. Nico. Then he was gone, the door swinging shut with a cheerful chime that felt obscene. I stood there, hands braced on the counter, trying to remember how to function. Mama. Nico appeared at my side, tugging my apron. Who was that man? He looked sad. I crouched down, pulling both boys into my arms, breathing in their shampoo and sugar smell. Just someone Mama knew a long time ago. Is he coming back? Mateo asked, too perceptive for 5. God, yes. And when he did, everything, my cafe, my new name, this fragile piece, would burn. Maybe, I whispered. But Mama's got everything under control. It was the biggest lie I'd told in 5 years. The bell above the door had barely stopped chiming when I moved. Instinct overrode thought. The same instinct that had kept me alive when I'd fled with nothing but a duffel bag and a positive pregnancy test. You need to leave, I said, my voice louder now, projecting across the cafe. Right now. Mrs. Chin was already halfway to the door, her newspaper clutched to her chest. She didn't look back. Smart woman. Louis didn't move. His men shifted, hands drifting toward their jackets in a choreography I remembered too well. But Louis just stood there, his gaze moving between Mateo and Nico like he was watching his own heart beating outside his chest. Brielle. My name again, and this time there was something broken beneath the steel. Don't do this. There's nothing to do. I came around the counter, positioning myself between him and my sons. You're mistaken. Those are my boys and you need to. Mistaken. The word came out sharp enough to draw blood. He took a step closer and I forced myself not to retreat. Look at them. Look at them and tell me I'm mistaken. I couldn't. God help me, I couldn't, because Mateo had his nose, the exact slope and angle. Nico had his mouth, that full lower lip and the way it curved when he smiled. And those eyes, those damned Mancuso eyes that had haunted my nightmares and my dreams in equal measure. Mama. Mateo's voice cut through the tension. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, baby. I didn't take my eyes off Louis. These men are just leaving. We're not. Louis's voice dropped to something quieter, more dangerous. Not until you tell me the truth. The truth. I laughed and it sounded wild even to my ears. You wouldn't know the truth if it killed you. Which it almost did. Which it almost did to me. His jaw clenched. What are you talking about? Don't. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so the boys wouldn't hear. Don't stand there and pretend you don't know why I ran. Don't act like you're the victim here. Something flickered in his expression. Confusion, then something darker. You think He stopped, his hands curling into fists at his sides. You think I wanted you gone? I think you wanted me dead. The words hung between us like smoke. Louis went perfectly still and for a moment I thought I'd miscalculated. Thought I'd pushed too hard, said too much. His men tensed and I became acutely aware of how small my cafe was, how few exits there were, how easily this could all go wrong. But then Louis's expression cracked. Not with anger, with something that looked horrifyingly like grief. Dead, he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. You think I wanted you dead? I know you did. I stopped myself, but too late. You saw what? He moved closer and this time I did step back. What did you see, Brielle? It doesn't matter anymore. Like hell it doesn't. His voice rose and both boys' heads snapped up. Louis noticed and I watched him struggle to control himself, to pull the mask back into place. When he spoke again, his voice was calmer but no less intense. Those boys have my eyes. My face. He stopped, swallowed hard. How old are they? That's none of your. How old? 5, I said, the word tasting like surrender. They just turned 5. I watched him do the math. Watched the realization dawn across his face like a sunrise after the world had ended. 5 years, he said. You've kept them from me for 5 years. I saved them. My voice shook now, All the fear and exhaustion of half a decade pouring out. From you. From that world. From everything that would have destroyed them. By destroying me? The question was so quiet I almost missed it. By letting me think you were dead? By taking my sons. They're not your sons. They're mine. They have my eyes, Brielle. His control finally shattered. They have my face, my blood, my... He stopped, his chest heaving. You owe me the truth. I owe you nothing. Mama. Nico was standing now, his small hand clutching Mateo's shoulder. Why is the man yelling? The sight of them, my beautiful boys watching their father rage at their mother, broke something in me. I turned to Louis and whatever he saw in my face made him take a step back. 8 o'clock, I said. You want the truth? Come back at 8. Alone. Or I swear to God, Louis, I'll disappear again and this time you'll never find us. For a long moment he just stared at me. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. 8 o'clock, he agreed. But Brielle. He moved toward the door, his men falling into formation behind him. Don't even think about running. Because this time I won't stop looking. Not ever. The door closed behind them with a soft chime that sounded like a countdown clock starting. I had 8 hours to decide if I was going to tell him everything. Or if I was going to pack up my boys and vanish into a city that had already forgotten how to find me. 5 years earlier. Vincent Caro had kind eyes. That was the first thing I'd noticed about Luis Consigliere when we met. The way he smiled at me across the conference table, the way he treated me like I belonged in rooms where blood and money were discussed in the same breath. That kindness was a knife I never saw coming. Brielle. He said my name gently like he was breaking bad news to a child. We need to talk. Privately. It was 2 in the morning. I'd been asleep in Louis' penthouse, wrapped in sheets that smelled like him, one hand resting on my stomach where our baby, still a secret, still just a flutter of possibility, was growing. Vincent's call had woken me, his voice urgent enough that I dressed and met him in the underground parking garage without question. Now I stood beside my car, the concrete cold beneath my bare feet because I'd forgotten shoes in my panic, and watched Vincent pull a manila folder from his briefcase. I need you to understand something, he said, and there was genuine regret in his voice. I like you. I think Louis good for you and you're good for him. But this, he opened the folder. This I can't ignore. The first page was a bank ledger. Rows of numbers, transaction codes, dates spanning 6 months. And there, highlighted in yellow, were withdrawals from Mancuso family accounts. $2 million, siphoned in increments small enough to avoid immediate detection. My name was on every single one. I don't understand, I whispered. This isn't, I would never. I know. Vincent's hand on my shoulder felt like a comfort and a threat. Or at least I want to believe that. But Brielle, the evidence is irrefutable. Digital signatures, security footage of you accessing the system, even your fingerprints on the transfer authorizations. That's impossible. My voice cracked. Vincent, I don't even have access to those accounts. You did. Louis gave you clearance 3 months ago, remember? He wanted you to understand the business, to be part of it. He flipped to another page. Screenshots of me at a computer terminal, timestamps matching the transactions. I've been investigating for weeks, trying to find another explanation. There isn't one. The parking garage tilted. I grabbed the car for balance, my other hand instinctively moving to my stomach. I was 8 weeks pregnant. Only 8 weeks and already everything was falling apart. Does Louis know? I asked, though I already knew the answer from the way Vincent's face tightened. He knows. Vincent pulled out his phone and I wanted to run. Wanted to get in my car and drive until the city was a memory. But I was frozen watching him press play on a voice recording. Louis' voice filled the garage, cold and final. She stole from the family, Vincent. She betrayed my trust, betrayed everything. I wanted handled. Quietly. Permanently. Are you sure? Vincent's voice on the recording. She's... I don't care what she is. She's a thief and a liar and I want her gone. Make it look like an accident. Tonight. The recording ended. The silence that followed was suffocating. I'm sorry, Vincent said, and he sounded like he meant it. I argued with him, tried to convince him to talk to you first, but he wouldn't listen. He's already sent Carlo and the Benedetti brothers. They're coming for you, Brielle. Maybe within the hour. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the phone he pressed into my palm. There's $5,000 in cash in the envelope, Vincent continued. It's all I could pull together without raising suspicion. Drive south, ditch your phone, change your name. Don't contact anyone from your old life. If Louis finds you, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Why are you helping me? The question came out broken. Because I have daughters. He looked away. And because despite everything I don't think you did this. But I can't prove it and Louis won't listen. So you need to disappear. I wanted to scream. Wanted to demand proof, to call Louis, to make him look me in the eyes and say those words. But the baby in my belly was a ticking clock and survival overrode everything else. I got in my car with Vincent's envelope, my heart shattered into pieces too small to count. In the rearview mirror I watched him make a phone call, his expression grim. I drove south like he said. Ditched my phone in a rest stop bathroom. Changed my name in a city that asked no questions. And I never looked back. Not even when I gave birth to twins with their father's eyes, in a hospital where no one knew my real name. Not even when Matteo asked why they didn't have a daddy like the other kids. Not even when I woke up screaming from dreams where Louis's voice whispered, "Make it look like an accident." I never looked back until 5 years later when he walked through my cafe door and the past caught up with me like a bullet I'd been running from my entire life. He was early. I'd just finished wiping down the last table, the boys already asleep upstairs in our small apartment above the cafe, when I heard the knock. Not the bell. The door was locked, but a deliberate, controlled knock that made my stomach drop. Through the glass, Louis stood alone. No bodyguards, no tactical gear. Just him in that charcoal suit, the serpent tattoo visible above his collar, his expression unreadable in the streetlight's glow. I could have pretended I wasn't here. Could have turned off the lights and hidden like a coward. But cowards didn't survive 5 years on the run with twin infants, and I was done running. I unlocked the door. "You're early," I said, not moving aside to let him in. "And you're still here." Something that might have been relief flickered across his face. "I half expected to find the place empty, your boys packed up and gone." I considered it. I stepped back, gesturing him inside. "But I'm tired of running." The cafe felt different with just the two of us. Smaller. More intimate. I locked the door behind him and moved to the counter, needing the physical barrier between us. Louis didn't sit. He stood in the center of the room, hands in his pockets, looking at everything except me. The chalkboard menu, the photos of the boys I'd hung on the wall, the small life I'd built from ashes. "They're beautiful," he said finally. "Matteo and Nico. They're," his voice caught. "They're incredible." "They are." I gripped the counter's edge. "And they're safe. That's all that matters." "Safe from what?" He turned to face me then, and the raw pain in his expression nearly broke my resolve. "Safe from me? Brielle, what the hell did I do to make you believe I'd hurt you?" "Hurt them? You ordered my execution." The words came out flat, factual. "You wanted me dead, Louis. So I disappeared." The color drained from his face. "What? Don't." I laughed bitterly. "Don't pretend you don't remember. Don't act like." "I never ordered anything." His voice rose, urgent and desperate. "Brielle, I swear on everything I never." "Why would you think that?" "Because Vincent showed me the proof." My hands were shaking now, the memory still fresh despite 5 years of distance. The ledger with my name on it. The bank transfers, the security footage. $2 million I supposedly stole from your family. Louis went very still. "Vincent," he repeated slowly. "He came to me in the middle of the night. told me you knew about the theft, that you'd already made your decision. I forced myself to keep going to relive the worst night of my life. He played me a recording, Louis. Your voice saying I betrayed you, that you wanted it handled quietly, permanently. That you'd sent people to, my voice broke. To make it look like an accident. That's impossible. But his face had gone from pale to white, a muscle ticking in his jaw. I never said those words. I never even suspected you of, Brielle. I tore my entire organization apart looking for you when you vanished. Why would Vincent lie? But even as I asked it, doubt crept in. Because the man standing in front of me didn't look like a killer caught in his lies. He looked like someone who'd just been shown the edge of an abyss he hadn't known existed. I don't know. His voice was raw. But I swear to God I never authorized your death. I never wanted you gone. When you disappeared. He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. I thought you'd left because of the life. Because you couldn't handle what I was. I looked for you for months. Months, Brielle. Does that sound like a man who wanted you dead? I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But 5 years of fear wasn't easy to dismantle. The recording, I said. I heard your voice. Recordings can be faked. His eyes locked on mine, blazing with fury, but not at me. The ledger, the footage, the transfers. All of it could be manufactured. Brielle, someone set you up. Someone wanted you gone badly enough to forge evidence and use my name to do it. Vincent. I said the name like a curse. Vincent. Louis agreed, and something deadly crept into his expression. My most trusted advisor. The man I've known since I was 15. He pulled out his phone. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Tonight. And if he did this, if he made you run, made you think I wanted you dead, kept my sons from me for 5 years. He didn't finish the threat. He didn't have to. There's one way to prove it, I heard myself say. The evidence. Do you still have access to the original files from 5 years ago? Everything's backed up. His fingers were already moving across his phone screen. Security logs, transaction records, all of it. If Vincent tampered with anything, there will be traces. He looked up at me. But I need you to come with me. To my office. My secure servers are there. I can't leave the boys. Then I'll have my most trusted people. People who aren't Vincent, stand guard here. Brielle, if someone framed you once, they might come back to finish what they started. Especially now that they know about Matteo and Nico. The thought hit me like ice water. You think we're in danger? I think, Louis said carefully, that someone went to extraordinary lengths to separate us 5 years ago. And now that we're back in the same room, they're going to be very, very nervous. Outside, a car door slammed. We both tensed, and Louis's hand moved inside his jacket to where I knew he kept a gun. But it was just a late-night delivery truck, its engine rumbling as it passed. Come with me, Louis said quietly. Please. Let me prove I never betrayed you. Let me prove I never stopped. He stopped himself, but I heard the unspoken words anyway. Let me prove I never stopped loving you. I looked at the stairs leading to my apartment, where my boys slept peacefully, unaware that their entire world was about to shift again. Then I looked at Louis, at the man I'd once loved enough to risk everything for. Make the call, I said. Get your people here. And then show me the truth. Louis's office occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower that overlooked the city like a surveillance post. 2 guards met us in the lobby, men I didn't recognize, which Louis assured me meant they weren't part of Vincent's network. Another team had been dispatched to watch the cafe, positioned where they could see my apartment windows. I'd left the boys sleeping with my neighbor Mrs. Huang standing guard, her expression grim when I told her someone might try to cause trouble. She'd simply nodded and pulled a baseball bat from her closet. I didn't ask why a 70-year-old woman kept a weapon by her door. Now I stood in Louis's war room, because that's what it was, with its wall of monitors, secure servers, and a conference table that had probably hosted more death sentences than business deals. A woman in her 40s sat at the table, 3 laptops open in front of her, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "This is Dr. Yara Osman," Louis said. "Best forensic accountant in the country. She's helped me clean up 3 attempted embezzlement schemes in the last 2 years." "4," Dr. Osman corrected without looking up. "You forgot the Castellano situation." She gestured to the seat across from her. "Miss Cortland, I understand we're looking at some interesting files from 5 years ago." "Interesting is one word for it," I said, sitting down. My hands were still shaking. Louis pulled up a chair beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "Pull everything from the dates Vincent showed Brielle. Bank transfers, security footage, access logs. All of it." Dr. Osman's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Already loaded. Let's start with the ledger." She turned one of the laptops toward us, and there it was, the same page that had destroyed my life 5 years ago. My name, the transaction codes, the highlighted withdrawals that totaled $2 million. "Walk me through what you remember," Dr. Osman said to me. "Vincent showed me paper copies. Said there were digital signatures, my fingerprints, security footage of me accessing the system." I swallowed hard. "He said it was irrefutable." Dr. Osman zoomed in on the document header. "First problem, the metadata. This file was created at 2:47 a.m. on the night you disappeared. But the transactions it supposedly documents span 6 months. Why would someone create a summary document at nearly 3 a.m.? Unless they were creating it specifically to show me," I said slowly. "Exactly." She pulled up another window. "Second problem, the timestamps. Look here. This transaction allegedly occurred at 9:15 p.m. on March 14th. But the system logs show the main server was offline for maintenance from 8 p.m. to midnight that night. This transaction couldn't have happened." Louis leaned forward, his jaw tight. "How many other inconsistencies?" "At least 7 that I can see immediately." Dr. Osman opened a third screen. "But here's where it gets interesting. Someone did steal $2 million from your accounts. The theft happened exactly as documented. But," she pulled up a different set of files. "The actual perpetrator was careful. Used a series of shell corporations, routed transfers through 3 different countries, scrubbed most of the digital trail." "Most." Louis's voice was dangerous. "They made one mistake. A single wire transfer that didn't get fully masked." She highlighted a line of code. "The authorization came from an internal terminal, but it wasn't Ms. Cortland's access code. It was," she paused, double-checking, "Terminal 7A. That's registered to Vincent Caro." Louis finished, his voice like ice. The room went silent except for the hum of the servers. "He stole the money," I said, the pieces falling into place. "And framed me for it. Then convinced you Louis wanted you dead so you'd disappear." Dr. Osman pulled up security footage, grainy black and white images of someone at a computer terminal. "This is the footage Vincent showed you, correct? You accessing the system." I nodded, recognizing the timestamp, the angle. "Watch." She played it forward, then zoomed in on the reflection in a wall mirror behind the desk. For just 3 frames you could see the person's face. It wasn't me. The features were similar enough, same hair color, same general build, but the nose was wrong, the cheekbones too sharp. "Deep fake body double," Dr. Osman said. "Probably Vincent's niece or someone he paid. The technology was primitive 5 years ago, but good enough to fool a cursory inspection." "And the voice recording?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Audio manipulation. Give me any 2 hours of someone talking and I can make them say anything." She closed her laptops. "Mr. Mancuso, someone orchestrated an extremely sophisticated fraud. They stole $2 million, created a convincing false trail leading to Ms. Cortland, then used your voice and authority to drive her into hiding." "Vincent." Louis stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "He's been with me for 12 years. I trusted him with everything. His fist slammed into the wall, leaving a dent in the drywall. He took everything from me. Why? I stood too, my legs unsteady. Why would he do this? $2 million is a good start, Dr. Osmond said. But I'm guessing there's more. People don't burn bridges this thoroughly unless they're planning something bigger. Louis turned, his expression carved from stone. He wanted control. With you gone, I was... He stopped, his voice breaking slightly. I was unstable. Reckless. I made decisions based on rage instead of strategy. Vincent stepped in, took over more operations, consolidated power. His eyes met mine. He didn't just steal money, Brielle. He stole us. And he's had 5 years to dig in deeper. My phone buzzed. Mrs. Huang's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my heart already racing. Is everything? The boys are fine, she said quickly. But there's a car outside. Black sedan, 2 men inside. They've been circling the block for the last 10 minutes. Louis was already moving, barking orders into his phone. We're coming, I told Mrs. Huang. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone. I hung up and met Louis's gaze. The grief and fury I saw there mirrored my own. He knows, Louis said. Vincent knows we're digging. And now he's making his move. We made it back to the cafe in 12 minutes. Louis's driver ran 2 red lights and took corners at speeds that made my stomach lurch, but I didn't complain. The black sedan Mrs. Huang had reported was gone by the time we arrived, but that didn't make me feel safer. If anything, it made it worse. Mrs. Huang opened the door before I could knock, her baseball bat still in hand. They left 5 minutes ago. Drove past slow 3 times, then disappeared. Thank you, I said, pressing cash into her hand that she immediately tried to refuse. Please just, thank you. She squeezed my arm, gave Louis a long, assessing look, then retreated to her own apartment. I heard 3 locks click into place. Upstairs, Mateo and Nico slept sprawled across my bed, their platinum hair catching the dim hallway light. I stood in the doorway watching them breathe, my heart a painful knot in my chest. They're perfect, Louis said quietly behind me. He'd followed me up, moving with surprising silence for a man his size. You did that. Kept them safe, raised them alone. His voice cracked slightly. I should have been there. You didn't know. The words surprised me, but they were true. We were both victims, Louis. Vincent played us both. But now he knows about them. Louis moved to the window, checking the street below with practiced efficiency. And that changes everything. I closed the bedroom door softly and led him to my small living room. It was nothing like his penthouse. Second-hand furniture, toys scattered across the floor, crayon drawings taped to the walls. But it was ours, and the thought of losing it made me physically ill. Explain, I said, sinking onto the couch. Louis remained standing, his body coiled with tension. In my world, family is currency. Leverage. Vincent knows I have enemies. The Castellano family, the Volkov syndicate, at least 3 rival operations who would love nothing more than to see the Mancuso empire crumble. He turned to face me. Your boys, our boys, are heirs to everything I've built. They're also the perfect targets. Vincent wouldn't hurt children. But even as I said it, doubt crept in. I believed Vincent was helping me 5 years ago. I'd been catastrophically wrong. Vincent stole $2 million and destroyed both our lives to cover it up. Louis's voice was harsh. What makes you think he'd draw the line at children? Especially children who threaten whatever plan he's been building for the last 5 years. I thought of Mateo's laugh, Nico's curiosity, the way they still sometimes crawled into my bed after nightmares. The idea of anyone targeting them made rage bloom hot and vicious in my chest. So what do we do? I asked. We work together. Louis sat down across from me, his elbows on his knees. I have resources, security, money, people who are loyal to me and not Vincent. You have information I need about what Vincent told you 5 years ago, details that might help us understand his endgame. Together we can protect the boys and take him down. An alliance. The word tasted strange. More than that. His hazel eyes, the same eyes my sons inherited, locked onto mine. A partnership. Full transparency, shared decisions, no more secrets. Because Brielle, if we're divided, we're vulnerable. And Vincent will exploit that. I wanted to say no. Wanted to grab my boys and run again, find another city, another life. But the black sedan circling my block proved what I'd known deep down since Louis walked through my cafe door. Running wouldn't save us anymore. What kind of protection are we talking about? I asked. Complete. Louis pulled out his phone, showing me photos of a compound outside the city. Secure location, 24-hour guard rotation, surveillance systems that would make the Pentagon jealous. The boys go nowhere without protection. Neither do you. They have school. Friends. A life. They'll have a life behind bulletproof glass until Vincent is neutralized. His jaw tightened. I know what I'm asking. I know it means uprooting everything you've built. But it's temporary and it's necessary. How temporary? However long it takes to expose Vincent, prove his betrayal to the other families and remove him from power. He paused. Days. Maybe weeks. And then you choose. The vulnerability in his expression caught me off guard. You and the boys can go back to your cafe, your life. Or, he stopped, seemed to reconsider. Or we figure out what comes next. Together. I looked around my small apartment at the life I'd built from nothing. Then I thought about Matteo asking why the man looked sad, about Nico's innocent trust, about how easily Vincent could shatter everything if we didn't move first. Ironclad protection, I said. Not just guards. I want to know every detail of the security plan. I want veto power over anything that affects the boys. And Louis. I leaned forward. If you're lying to me, if this is some elaborate scheme to take them from me, I would never. The ferocity in his voice was almost frightening. They're my sons, Brielle. But they're your world. I understand that. And I swear on everything I have, I will keep them safe. All of you. I studied his face, looking for deception, for the monster Vincent had convinced me existed. All I saw was a father meeting his children for the first time and a man who'd lost 5 years he could never get back. Hey, I said. We have an alliance. Louis extended his hand. I took it, his grip warm and solid and terrifying in its implications. Outside, a car engine started. We both tensed, moving to the window in unison. A different sedan, gray this time, idling across the street. Your people or his? I whispered. Wine. Louis's hand moved to the small of my back, protective and possessive. But we moved tonight anyway. Pack what the boys need. We leave in 20 minutes. I nodded, already mentally cataloging favorites, toys, comfort items, the things that would make this transition less traumatic. 20 minutes to leave behind the life I'd fought so hard to build. 20 minutes before we stepped into Louis's world and all its brutal consequences. I went to wake my sleeping sons and prayed I wasn't making the second worst mistake of my life. Matteo pressed his face against the floor-to-ceiling window, his breath fogging the glass. Mama, we're higher than the clouds. Not quite, baby. But we were close, 47th floor, with the city sprawled below us like a circuit board of lights. Louis's penthouse occupied the entire top level. A fortress disguised as luxury with its marble floors, modern furniture, and security cameras positioned so discreetly you'd miss them if you weren't looking. I was looking. This place is awesome. Nico spun in a circle, taking in the vaulted ceilings, the massive television, the kitchen that was bigger than my entire cafe. Can we live here forever? Just for a little while, I said, catching Louis's expression, something between hope and heartbreak. Let me show you your room. Louis crouched down to their level, and I watched my sons study their father's face with open curiosity. It has bunk beds and a bookshelf and... Bunk beds. Matteo's eyes went wide. Nico, we get bunk beds. They took off running, following Louis's directions down the hallway. Their excited voices echoed back, arguing over who got the top bunk. The sound was so normal, so beautifully mundane that for a moment I could almost forget why we were here. Then I saw the security panel by the door. Biometric scanner, reinforced locks, direct line to Louis' protection detail, and reality crashed back. They'll be safe here. Louis appeared beside me, his presence solid and strangely comforting. I've tripled the guard rotation. No one gets past the lobby without facial recognition and security clearance. Vincent has security clearance, I pointed out. Not anymore. I revoked it 20 minutes ago. His smile was sharp and cold. Along with his access to every Mancuso property, account, and operation. If he wants to come at us, he'll have to do it openly. Won't that make him suspicious? He's already suspicious. But now he knows we know. Louis gestured toward his office. Dr. Osmond sent over more surveillance footage. You should see it. The office was all dark wood and leather, with a desk that probably cost more than my car and 3 large monitors mounted on the wall. Dr. Osmond's face appeared on the center screen via video call, her expression grim. Miss Cortland, I've compiled 6 weeks of surveillance footage showing Vincent's extracurricular activities. He pulled up the first video. This is from 4 days ago. Watch the man Vincent meets in the back corner. The footage showed a dimly lit restaurant. Vincent sat at a corner booth, his back to the wall, speaking with a man whose face was partially obscured by shadows. But I could see the distinctive scar running down his left cheek. That's Alexei Volkov, Louis said quietly. Head of the Russian syndicate. They've been trying to move into our territory for 3 years. Why would Vincent meet with them? But I already knew the answer. Keep watching. Dr. Osmond fast-forwarded to show Vincent sliding an envelope across the table. Alexei opened it, examined the contents, then nodded. We pulled phone records. Vincent called Alexei 17 times in the last month. The screen split, showing different footage. Vincent meeting with 3 different men over the course of 2 weeks. A warehouse at night, a parking garage, a private club. Each time documents changed hands. Each time money was exchanged. He's selling you out, I breathed. Selling information about your operations to your enemies. Not just information. Louis' hands curled into fists. Look at the timestamp on this one. Dr. Osmond pulled up footage from yesterday, the same day Louis had walked into my cafe. Vincent sat in a car with someone I didn't recognize, gesturing animatedly. The footage had no audio, but the body language was clear. Urgency, anger, fear. That's Carlo Benedetti, Louis said. Vincent's muscle. The same man Vincent supposedly sent to handle you 5 years ago. My blood went cold. You think? I think Vincent never sent anyone to kill you 5 years ago because he needed you alive and hidden. You were his insurance policy, proof that I was unstable after my girlfriend stole from the family and vanished. Louis' voice was tight with barely controlled rage. But now that we've found each other, now that we're asking questions. We're loose ends, I finished. Along with Matteo and Nico. He turned away from the screen, his jaw working. Vincent's been building a coup for 5 years. He has money, connections to rival families, and enough dirt on our operations to destroy us from the inside. The boys are just... His voice broke slightly. They're collateral damage to him. From down the hall, I heard Nico's laugh, followed by Matteo shouting something about claiming the top bunk by right of being 2 minutes older. The sound was like glass breaking. What's his end game? I asked. Complete control of the Mancuso empire. Dr. Osmond pulled up a financial document. If he can eliminate you and discredit Louis, the other families will see weakness. They'll move in, and Vincent will position himself as the only one capable of maintaining order. He'll kill us. The words came out flat. All of us. He'll try, Louis corrected, moving to stand beside me. But Brielle, I've been in this world my entire life. I know how to fight, how to survive, how to win. And now. His hand found mine, fingers interlacing. I have everything to fight for. Through the office window I could see the boys jumping on their new beds, their shadows dancing on the wall. My beautiful boys who deserved birthday parties and scraped knees and normal childhoods. Not this. Never this. Then we take him down, I said. Before he takes us. Louis squeezed my hand. Together. Outside, 47 floors below, the city glittered with promise and threat in equal measure. Somewhere down there Vincent Cara was planning our destruction. But we were planning his first. I couldn't sleep. The penthouse guest room was pristine, 1,000 thread count sheets, blackout curtains, a mattress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But every time I closed my eyes I saw Vincent's face in that parking garage 5 years ago, heard his voice telling me to run. At 3 a.m. I gave up and padded into the kitchen. The city lights cast long shadows across the marble floors. I made coffee, then stood at the window watching distant headlights trace paths through the streets below. Can't sleep either? Louis emerged from his office, still dressed in the same clothes from earlier. He looked exhausted, hollowed out by betrayal and fury. Too much adrenaline. I offered him the coffee pot. And too many questions. He poured himself a cup, standing close enough that I could feel his body heat. Like what? Why forge a goodbye note? The question had been nagging at me since Dr. Osmond showed us the surveillance footage. If Vincent wanted me to disappear, why bother with a note I supposedly left behind? To make it look voluntary. To convince me you chose to leave. Louis' jaw tightened. It worked. I was furious at you for months before the anger turned to grief. Do you still have it? The note. He nodded slowly. Everything from that time period is in a locked file in my office. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. He set down his coffee. You want to see it? I did, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe I needed to see the lie that had shaped 5 years of my life. Maybe I just needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. Louis' office safe was hidden behind a painting of a serpent, the same design as his tattoo. Inside was a metal box containing papers, photographs, and a small velvet box I deliberately didn't look at too closely. The note was in a plastic sleeve, preserved like evidence. Which I supposed it was. My hands shook as I took it from him. The handwriting was eerily similar to mine. The same slant, the same looping letters, the same signature at the bottom. But something was wrong. What is it? Louis moved closer, reading over my shoulder. The eyes. I pointed to the word think in the second line. Look at how they're dotted. Each lowercase I had a small heart above it instead of a simple dot. Cute. Feminine. Completely wrong. I don't understand, Louis said. I never dot my I's with hearts. Never have. I pulled out my phone, showing him old photos of shopping lists, notes to babysitters, anything with my handwriting. See? Simple dots. No embellishment. I always thought the heart thing was childish. Louis' expression shifted, sharpening with understanding. Someone copied your handwriting but added their own habit. Exactly. I studied the note again, and now I could see other small inconsistencies. The way the T's were crossed slightly too high, the way the capital B in my name had an extra flourish. Close enough to fool someone who only saw my handwriting occasionally. Not close enough to fool me. Dr. Osmond said Vincent used his niece for the security footage deepfake. Louis said, pulling out his phone. Young woman, similar build to you. He pulled up a photo. A girl in her early 20s with dark hair and delicate features. Gianna Caro. She's been on Vincent's payroll as an administrative assistant for 6 years. I looked at the photo, then back at the note. The hearts over the eyes suddenly made perfect sense. It was exactly the kind of thing a 20-something woman would do. She wrote this, I said. Vincent had her forge my goodbye note. Louis was already texting someone. I'm sending this to Dr. Osmond. She can run handwriting analysis, compare it to any samples we have of Gianna's writing. My phone buzzed. A notification from an unknown number. I frowned, opening the message. You should have stayed hidden, Brielle. A photo loaded below the text. My cafe, photographed from across the street. Mrs. Huang's apartment window was circled in red. My coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the marble floor. Louis. He'd already seen it, his expression going deadly calm in the way that was somehow more terrifying than rage. He made a phone call, his voice clipped and commanding. Get someone to Mrs. Huang's apartment. No. And pull surveillance from every camera within 3 blocks of the Morning Ember. Is she? I couldn't finish the question. She's fine. I had a team watching the building. But his voice was tight. Vincent's escalating. He knows we're closing in. Another text came through, this time to both our phones simultaneously. The boys have your eyes, Mancuso. Would be a shame if something happened to those pretty faces. The world tilted. I grabbed the desk for balance, my vision tunneling. Louis's hand found my shoulder, steady and grounding. Breathe, he said quietly. The boys are safe. There are 3 guards outside their room and 2 more in the hallway. Vincent can't touch them. He knows where we are. Of course he does. I revoked his access, but he spent years building this organization. He has loyalists, people who owe him favors. Louis's phone rang. He answered, listened for 30 seconds, then ended the call. Dr. Osman confirmed it. The handwriting on the goodbye note matches samples from Gianna Caro employment application. We have proof Vincent orchestrated the forgery. Proof won't stop him from coming after the boys. My voice sounded distant, hollow. No. But it gives us leverage. Louis moved to his computer, pulling up files I couldn't begin to understand. Vincent's been building his coup carefully, keeping his betrayal hidden from the other families. If we expose him, show them evidence of his theft, his meetings with rival syndicates, the forged note, we turn his own people against him. And then he becomes the target instead of us. He looked up, his hazel eyes burning with cold fury. But we have to move fast. Before he makes his next move. As if on cue, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, my hand shaking. Hello. Brielle. Vincent's voice was smooth, almost friendly. I think it's time we talked. Just the 2 of us. Before this gets any messier. Louis was already tracing the call, his fingers flying across his keyboard. We have nothing to talk about, I said. Oh, I think we do. Pause. After all, you wouldn't want your boys to grow up without a mother. Would you? The line went dead. Louis looked up from his screen, his expression grim. He's 3 blocks away. And he's moving toward us. I'd argued about the school run. The boys had already missed 2 days, and Mateo kept asking when they could see their friends. Louis had wanted to keep them home, but I'd pushed back. We couldn't let Vincent steal their childhood along with everything else. Now, sitting in the armored SUV with bulletproof glass and 2 guards in the front seat, I wondered if I'd made a fatal mistake. Mama, why can't we take the normal car? Nico pressed his face against the window, watching his school appear in the distance. Because this one is safer, baby. I forced a smile, adjusting his backpack. It's like riding in a tank. Cool. Mateo perked up. Like in video games? Something like that. Marcus, our head of security, pulled up to the curb. 3 hours, he said, meeting my eyes in the rearview mirror. We'll be right here when school lets out. I walked the boys to the entrance, hyper-aware of every person on the sidewalk, every car that slowed down. But it was just parents and children, backpacks and lunch boxes, the mundane chaos of morning drop-off. Love you, Mama. Nico hugged me tight. Love you more. I kissed both their heads, watching them disappear through the double doors. My heart was a stone in my chest. The 3 hours crawled by. I spent them in the penthouse with Louis, reviewing more of Dr. Osman's evidence, building the case against Vincent that we'd present to the other families. But my mind was with my boys, counting down minutes until pickup. At 2:47 p.m. my phone rang. Marcus. We have a situation. His voice was clipped, professional. Black Escalade, no plates, been circling the block since 2:30. 2 occupants, both male, both armed. My blood turned to ice. Where are you? 4 blocks from the school. We're moving to intercept. Gunfire crackled through the phone. Sharp, rapid pops that made my ears ring. Marcus. I was already running for the elevator, Louis right behind me. Marcus, what's happening? They're engaging. More gunshots. Get the principal on the line. Lock down the school. Now. The next 20 minutes were a blur of sirens, shouted commands, and my own heartbeat drowning out rational thought. Louis drove like a demon, his face carved from stone, while I called the school over and over until finally, the principal answered. Mrs. Cortland, the boys are fine. They're in the office with me. There's been some kind of incident outside. Lock every door. Don't let them out until I'm there. I could barely breathe. Please. Of course. We're in full lockdown. We arrived to a war zone. The black Escalade was riddled with bullet holes, its windshield shattered. 2 bodies lay covered with sheets on the pavement. Marcus stood with 3 other guards, all of them bloodied but alive, talking rapidly to police officers who looked severely out of their depth. I ran past all of it, Louis clearing a path through the chaos with nothing but his presence and a few barked words. Inside the school, we found Matteo and Nico huddled in the principal's office, their faces pale and tear-stained. Mama. They launched themselves at me and I caught them both, sinking to the floor with their weight in my arms. I've got you. You're safe. I've got you. I kept repeating it, a mantra against the horror. We heard the loud bangs, Matteo whispered against my shoulder. Like fireworks. But scary. Louis crouched beside us, his hand gentle on Nico's back. It's okay. You're both so brave. Are the bad guys gone? Nico asked, his voice small. Yes, Louis said, and the absolute certainty in his voice was terrifying. They're gone. An hour later, we were in a different car, speeding toward the countryside. The safe house was 90 minutes outside the city. A converted estate with 20-foot walls, armed guards, and enough security protocols to protect a president. The boys had fallen asleep in the back seat, exhausted from fear and adrenaline. I watched them through the rearview mirror, their platinum heads resting against each other. Marcus said the men in the Escalade are both dead, I said quietly. Good. Louis's voice was flat, empty of mercy. Were they? Vincent's. We found burner phones with his number in their recent calls. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. They weren't there to follow the boys, Brielle. They were there to take them. The words hung in the air like smoke. I thought about what would have happened if Marcus hadn't been watching, if Louis's team hadn't engaged. I thought about my boys in the back of that Escalade, terrified and alone, bargaining chips in a game that would have ended with all of us dead. This is real, I heard myself say. Not just threats. He really wants us. Dead. Yes. Louis's jaw was tight. But he failed. And now he knows we're not easy targets. He'll try again. He will. But not at the safe house. Not with what I'm planning. I looked at him, at the man I'd once loved and feared in equal measure. What are you planning? His smile was cold and full of promise. To end this. Once and for all. The safe house appeared through the trees. Massive stone walls, guard towers at each corner, floodlights that turned night into day. A fortress in every sense of the word. We'll be safe here, Louis said, but even he didn't sound entirely convinced. I looked back at my sleeping sons and made a silent promise. Whatever it took, however dark we had to go, Vincent Caro would not touch them again. Even if it meant becoming the monster he'd always claimed I was. The safe house had a library. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking acres of woods, leather chairs that swallowed you whole, and thousands of books that probably hadn't been touched in years. It was the furthest room from the guarded perimeter, which made it the safest place for the boys to decompress. Mateo sat on the floor with a picture book he wasn't reading. Nico was curled in my lap, his thumb in his mouth. A habit he'd broken a year ago but had returned to after the shooting. Neither had spoken much since we arrived 3 hours ago. Louis stood by the window, silhouetted against the dying light, his phone pressed to his ear. I caught fragments of his conversation, words like perimeter, rotation, armed response. The language of war. When he finally hung up, the silence felt heavy enough to crush us. "Are we in trouble?" Mateo asked suddenly, his voice small. Louis turned, and I watched him struggle to soften his expression. "No, buddy. You're not in trouble." "Then why are there so many men with guns?" "Because," Louis glanced at me uncertain. "We hadn't discussed how much to tell them, how to explain that their existence had made them targets. Because we want to keep you very safe," I said carefully. "There are some bad people who might try to hurt us, so we're staying here until they can't anymore." "Like the men at school?" Nico's voice was muffled against my shoulder. My throat tightened. "Yes, baby. Like them." Mateo stood up, crossing to where Louis stood. He looked up at him with those devastating hazel eyes. Louis's eyes, and I saw my son gathering his courage for something. "You've been here a lot," Mateo said. "And you look like us." Nico said so too. Louis crouched down slowly, bringing himself to Mateo's level. "I do look like you. Both of you." "Why?" The single word hung in the air. I held my breath, watching Louis's face work through a dozen emotions: grief, hope, fear, love so raw it was almost painful to witness. "Because..." His voice cracked. He cleared his throat, tried again. "Because I'm your papa." Mateo blinked. "Our papa." "Yes." Louis's hands were shaking. I'd seen this man face down armed enemies without flinching, but a 5-year-old's question had undone him completely. "I didn't know about you. Your mama had to go away before you were born and I couldn't find her. But now I have and..." He stopped, his jaw clenching. "And I'm so sorry I wasn't there. So sorry I missed everything." Nico had lifted his head from my shoulder, watching with wide eyes. "Jamie at preschool has a papa," Mateo said thoughtfully. "He comes to pick up sometimes and they play catch." "I'd like that." Louis's voice was rough. "I'd like to play catch with you. And read you stories. And whatever you want. Anything you want." "Can you keep the bad men away?" The question was so innocent, so trusting that I felt tears burn my eyes. "Yes." Louis's response was immediate, absolute. "I will never let anyone hurt you. Either of you. I promise." Mateo studied him for a long moment, then did something that broke us both. He stepped forward and wrapped his small arms around Louis's neck. Louis's eyes closed, his arms coming up to hold his son with a gentleness that contradicted everything about his reputation. When Nico slid off my lap and joined them, completing the embrace, I watched the fearsome Mafia boss. The man Vincent had convinced me was a monster. Shatter and rebuild himself around his children. "I love you," Louis whispered into their hair. "I love you both so much." "Even though you just met us?" Nico asked. "Especially because I just met you." Louis pulled back enough to look at both their faces. "I've been missing you my whole life without knowing it." I stood there, witness to a moment that should have happened 5 years ago in a hospital room, with baby blankets and first photos and a future we'd been robbed of. The grief of it threatened to drown me. All those missed moments stolen by Vincent's lies. But underneath the grief was something else. A fierce, burning determination. Mateo and Nico deserved better than this. They deserved birthday parties without armed guards, school days without bulletproof glass, a father who could be present without checking for threats in every shadow. And Louis, I watched him teaching Mateo how to make shadow puppets on the wall while Nico laughed. Louis deserved to be more than the monster Vincent had painted him as. He deserved to be what I saw right now. A father meeting his sons and discovering what he'd been fighting for his entire life. "Mama, come see." Nico called. "Papa's making a dragon." Oh. The word should have felt strange, rushed. Instead, it felt inevitable. I joined them by the window, and Louis's hand found mine, our fingers interlacing while the boys demanded increasingly elaborate shadow creatures. In the growing darkness outside, I could see the silhouettes of guards patrolling the perimeter, armed and vigilant. We were in a fortress under siege with a traitor hunting us. But in this room, with our sons laughing and Louis's hand warm in mine, I felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. Tomorrow, Louis said quietly, his breath warm against my ear while the boys debated whether shadow puppets could have laser eyes. Tomorrow we end this. I nodded, watching our sons. His eyes, my determination, our future. And knew that Vincent Caro had made a fatal miscalculation. He'd given us everything to fight for. And people who have everything to lose make the most dangerous enemies of all. The warehouse smelled like rust and old sins. Dr. Osmond had done her part perfectly. Leaked documents to one of Vincent's loyalists suggesting I was ready to testify against him, that I had proof of everything. The bait was irresistible. Now Louis and I stood in the shadows of the abandoned building, surrounded by 15 of his most trusted men, waiting for Vincent to walk into the trap we'd built for him. "He'll come," Louis said quietly. "He can't afford not to." I checked my phone. 8:47 p.m. The boys were safe at the compound with Marcus and 6 other guards, probably already asleep after an evening of movies and popcorn. They thought we'd gone to handle some boring adult stuff. They had no idea their future was being decided in a place where blood had been spilled before and would be again. Headlights cut through the darkness. 2 cars moving slowly, cautiously. I felt Louis tense beside me, his hand moving to the weapon at his hip. Vincent emerged from the first car, flanked by 4 men I recognized from surveillance footage, his personal crew loyal to him above all else. He looked calm, almost relaxed, like he was arriving at a business meeting instead of his own execution. "Show yourself, Brielle," Vincent called out, his voice echoing off the corrugated metal walls. "I know you're here. Let's talk like civilized people." Louis squeezed my hand once, then stepped out of the shadows. I followed, my heart a war drum. Vincent's expression flickered. Surprise, then calculation, then something that might have been resignation. "Louis, I should have known you'd be here. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out?" Louis's voice was cold, controlled. The forged ledger, the deep-faked recording, 5 years of lies. Your own niece's handwriting on the goodbye note. That was sloppy, Vincent. Gianna always did dot her I's with hearts. Vincent smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. A small oversight in an otherwise perfect plan. Perfect. I stepped forward, rage overriding fear. "You destroyed my life. Made me think Louis wanted me dead. Stole 5 years I can never get back. I gave you a gift." Vincent's calm was infuriating. "I saved you from this world, Brielle. From the violence, the paranoia, the inevitable tragedy. You should be thanking me." "You stole $2 million, Louis said. "Sold my operations to the Volkovs. Tried to have my children kidnapped." His voice dropped to something deadly. "You tried to kill my family. Your family." Vincent laughed, bitter and sharp. "You mean the heirs who would have pushed me aside? The woman who made you soft, distracted? I built this empire as much as you did, Louis. I bled for it, sacrificed for it. And you were going to throw it all away for love. So you took it from me." Understanding dawned on Louis's face. "The money, the betrayals to rival families. You were planning a coup. I was planning to save what we built." Vincent's mask finally cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. "But then you found her. Found them. And I realized you'd never let me have what I'd earned." "You earned nothing," Louis said. "You're a thief and a traitor." Vincent's hand moved, fast, practiced, reaching for the weapon at his back. He never made it. For shots rang out simultaneously. Vincent's men dropped first, Louis's team moving with lethal precision. Vincent himself stumbled backward, his gun clattering to the concrete floor, red blooming across his chest. He fell to his knees, his breathing ragged. Louis walked toward him slowly, deliberately, until he stood over the man who'd been his right hand for 12 years. "You made one mistake," Louis said quietly. "You threatened my children." Vincent tried to speak, blood on his lips, but whatever words he had died with him as he collapsed onto the cold warehouse floor. The silence that followed was absolute. Louis's men moved efficiently, cleaning up the scene with the practiced ease of people who'd done this before. I stood frozen, watching Vincent's body being wrapped in plastic, watching the evidence of betrayal being erased. "Brielle." Louis's hand found my shoulder, gentle despite the violence we'd just witnessed. "We should go." "Is it over?" My voice sounded distant, hollow. "It's over. The other families will receive evidence of Vincent's betrayals in the morning. They'll understand why justice was necessary." He turned me to face him. "You and the boys are safe now." Safe. The word felt foreign, impossible after 5 years of running. "Come home," Louis said. "Not to hide, not to survive, but to live. You, me, Matteo, Nico. A real family." I looked at this man. This dangerous, complicated man who'd faced down his betrayer to protect the children he'd just met. The man who'd knelt before our sons and promised them the world. The man who'd loved me enough to tear apart his own organization searching for me. "I'm not running anymore," I said. "Not from you, not from this life, not from what we could be." His eyes closed, relief washing over his features. "Thank you." "But Louis." I stepped closer, my hand on his chest where I could feel his heart racing. "If we do this, if we build this family, no more secrets. No more lies. We protect them together." "Together," he agreed. "Always." 3 weeks later, I stood in the doorway of the boys' new room. Not at the safe house, but in a home we'd chosen together. Halfway between the city and the countryside, with a yard big enough for soccer and walls strong enough to keep out the world. Matteo and Nico slept in beds shaped like race cars, their blonde heads peaceful on pillows embroidered with their initials. Louis's arm wrapped around my waist as we watched them breathe. "They asked me today if we're staying here forever," I whispered. "What did you tell them?" "I told them yes." I leaned into him, into this future I'd stopped running from. "We're staying. All of us." Outside, somewhere in the darkness, guards patrolled. But inside we were just a family. Imperfect, complicated, forged from betrayal and blood and a love that had survived 5 years of lies. I wasn't Brielle Cortland anymore, always looking over her shoulder. I was home. And I was never leaving again.